Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at this, our first online consultation for St Mary Le Port. It's fantastic to see so many of you have signed up to attend today's session. We have got a few more people who have registered who haven't yet signed in, so we're just going to wait a minute or so just to allow them to join before we get going with the information. Thank you. Okay, so thank you again for joining us. Just a quick introduction. My name is Nick Vose. I'm a director of a company called Marengo Communications. I will be chairing today's session on behalf of you and putting your questions to today's panel. I'm just going to introduce all of the panel members one by one. Ros, if I can come to you first, just to say a quick hello and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ros Bird. I'm Commercial Director at MEPC, and I'm leading the project on behalf of the pension fund investor. Thank you,
Ros. Chris, if I can bring you in.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Kimber-Nicholson. I'm a development manager working for MEPC, assisting in the scheme with regards to the technical and financial aspects mainly.
Thank you very much, Chris. And now bringing our first Keith Bradley.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Keith Bradley, a partner at Film Club Bradley Studios. We're architects for the project, and I'm speaking to you from my home in Bath today.
Thank you, Keith. And Alice, if I can bring you in, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alice McClure. I'm the project architect on St Mary Le Port. I'm really looking forward to presenting to you today.
Thank you, Alice. And then finally, our second Keith French.
Oh, hi everyone, Keith French. I'm a director of Grant Associates. We're a group of landscape architects and we're based in Bath as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Keith. And just to say, we also have Chris and Reese from Savills, our planning consultants, who are here to answer any questions. And we have James as well, who is our heritage consultant, also here to answer any questions. I appreciate that this software is probably new to many of you, so I'll just quickly explain how it works. To your right, you'll see a tab where you can ask your questions. Please put your questions in there as we go through the presentation, and I'd encourage you to start putting those questions from now. You can also like certain questions. That just gives me an idea of any question you really want to see answered. And also, please use this tab to let us know if you have any technical difficulties. We're going to look to take the questions at the end. I'm going to put those to the panel in themes. So if you can try and keep your questions to a single issue per question, that will just help me organise those for later. We're probably going to be talking for around about half an hour. So we have an hour for questions at the end. We've got a lot of information to cover, so if you feel we've missed anything out, please do ask that question. Okay, so I'm shortly going to hand you over to Ros. Ros is going to talk us through two really important aspects of our proposals. That's our approach to stakeholder engagement and also our approach to social and environmental impact. Ros is then going to talk a bit about placemaking and the vibe that we're looking to try and create here at St Mary Le Port. And then we're going to hand over to Keith, Alice and Keith to talk us through the proposals. I will then come back, remind you how to get involved, and we'll take the questions. Ros, over to you.
Thanks, Nick. That's great. So as Nick said, I wanted to talk to you first really about our approach to this scheme as a long-term pension fund investor. And the four aspects are stakeholder engagement, how we take care of the environment, social impact, and also placemaking. In terms of stakeholder engagement, we've spent a lot of time getting to know the city. We've done lots of research and continue to do that, looking at the past, current situation and the future potential of Bristol. To do that, we've had regular discussions with a wide variety of stakeholders, and these have included Friends of Castle Park, Civic Society, Bristol Tree Forum, the Business Improvement District, and lots of others, as you can see, a wide variety of perspectives being sought. And the whole point of that exercise, and it's been ongoing throughout and will continue, is to listen and to learn about, the history, what's important, aspirations, and also concerns. We understand that the site has been brought forward for development before, and groups are concerned about, the quality of the development and its effect on Castle Park and many other things. Friends of Castle Park, for example, really raised the point about the entrance to Castle Park from Bristol Bridge and how we could enhance that, and also the relationship with Castle Park and how Castle Park would work and how we could add to the park rather than building on it, which all of those things we've addressed, and you'll see that in the presentation. Civic Society really encouraged us to focus on the buildings at ground floor level, the variety and interest, and making it really inviting, which we've looked at in detail. Bristol Tree Forum, we've worked with looking at our tree retention and compensation. And then others like St Mungo's and the Business Improvement District, we were talking about security and events and the sort of activities that we could have on site that would really improve and enhance that area and make it more attractive and welcoming. We've also talked to the Chamber and the BID and the local hotels about the need for more food and beverage and to support local growing businesses and how we can do that in our development. And also had a really great conversation with the Bristol Walking Alliance about access for people with disabilities and really making sure there's a pedestrian focus, not just a cycling pedestrian focus. So really enlightening conversations, and just started talking to Unit DX and other companies that are involved in the sort of business ecosystem, and ongoing conversations with local companies about the need for flexible office space.
So we represent long-term investors with sustainable goals, and we carry out research of environmental and social factors, as Ros has just outlined, and sustainability issues, which help us make better decisions as to how to build the buildings. Our scheme designs will exceed current standards, and we will be following best practice, both local and national, including UK Green Building Council guidelines, and we're also signed up to and following the Better Buildings Partnership framework. We will be targeting BREEAM Outstanding for the buildings, and we're reviewing the design to ensure we seek to reduce embodied carbon in the new buildings. And in addition to that, we will also be targeting the buildings being net zero carbon in operation. Back to you, Ros.
Thanks, Chris. So as well as the buildings, we're, and thinking about those in relation to the environment, we also want to look at how we can protect, preserve and enhance the natural environment. We're conscious of the environment bill that's currently going through, and we know that within a couple of years, all developers and the planning authority will be focusing on this as a requirement. But I'm conscious of, the opportunity here to do something to focus on the natural environment and also contribute to the One City ecological strategy. We're looking at how we can set up an environmental net gain strategy from now, looking at the natural assets, biodiversity, and obviously the human welfare benefits. And the difference is that it isn't just looking at biodiversity and impact at day one. This will be not just the immediate impact, but the long-term impact on the ecology and biodiversity and the welfare benefits of the natural environment on the site and in the immediate surrounding area. And then in terms of social impact, as sort of long-term investors in the city and long-term investors in other developments around the UK, we are very conscious of social responsibility, and wherever we work, we want to find out what's needed, and work with local partners to pilot ideas and hopefully turn these into sort of legacy projects. The pictures here you can see at Silverstone Park in Northampton and Wellington Place in Leeds, where there's been a need identified with them developed projects. So we've done some coding clubs in primary schools. We've opened up engineering facilities and gone into secondary schools to talk about career opportunities, and we've worked on pride projects and things like that at Wellington Place in Leeds. So it's really got to be pertinent to the local area and something that's can have a positive effect on people's lives. So for Bristol, what we're looking at, and we've consulted widely, working with a group of about 20 people now from some of these organisations involved are on this screen here. And we're looking at a project in Castle Park to provide meaningful work experience to about 200 young people. That's been the result of the feedback from the groups that you can see here. Creative Youth Network will be leading on this, and we did have a really great first meeting a couple of weeks ago, where we brought representatives from these groups together, and we just talked about the young people, what's needed, how we can work together to do something, obviously, that's as well as everything else is COVID safe, so outdoors in Castle Park between St Peter's and St Mary Le Port. And then in terms of the actual place that we create and how we work, our starting point is always going to be people. So what will be attractive and add value on this site? We know we need a strong public realm and we need to focus on placemaking. So yeah, we're very conscious of the fact that it's a central location, that it's scheduled ancient monuments like the ruins of St Mary Le Port there, that there's a key relationship with the park and the market, and that's why we've appointed the Field and Clay Bradley Studios and Grant Associates as highly regarded designers who are going to be able to work with us, bringing those ideas in from the local community engagement, and then really design something that tackles all of those different opportunities to make this a great place. And what we're thinking is, and this is just a sort of image of the ground floor with all of the rest of it cut away, so that you can see we're thinking about what will it be like at ground floor, and the design is to try and be inviting place for people who are going to be living in the area, who already work in the area, who maybe want to come and visit or study. And it's about creating a good vibe. We think that and discussions with local stakeholders has brought into the fore the idea that we should add value to the sort of shopping experience and the activity in the area by creating some independent shopping experience that complements what's already going on at St Nick's Market, and also add something different to Cabot Circus. So we've deliberately designed small units, variety there, and we're going to take a lot of time to make sure we get a good mix there, to make sure there's something for everyone as well, for every budget. And we also know that the place needs to be attractive and welcoming at night, and to do this we thought about access levels, activity that could be created, the lighting, security, and all of these things that go into supporting that. So overall, what we want to do is create a really welcoming, nice place that fits in and adds value. And then finally, just to confirm, in terms of our plans, the ones that you're about to see now, we're fully aware of the policy context and of the adopted and the emerging plans, and we've assured that our proposals are policy compliant.
Thank you, Ros. So Ros has set the scene for what we're planning on the site. But before we show you the proposals, we just wanted to say that we started with the history of the place. This is one of the core historical parts of the city. And this is an aerial view pre the Blitz, showing the St Mary Le Port church in the middle there, surrounded by a very tight network of streets and spaces. A very sort of vibrant and historic area that was a sort of thriving part of the city from sort of medieval right through to pre-war times. And this image also shows some of the key sort of buildings and frontages that are on there. So, for instance, local people will probably aware of the old Dutch house that used to exist on the corner of High Street and Wine Street, on the top right-hand corner there. The site of the Bristol High Cross, which was taken away from the site many years ago in the middle, and then the street scenes, which was so active and vibrant, and creating a great place for people. That has been lost over recent times, and so although we're not recreating the past, we're trying to actually create that sort of very urban and intensive atmosphere. Sorry. And one of the starting points for structuring the site was actually to think about the historic streets and routes and spaces that used to exist. And again, although we can't recreate those literally, we can create a sort of a memory of them, and also create a very permeable and connected site as a consequence. So, for example, the plan is to open up the alignment of Mary Laporte Street. You can just see in the middle of the picture there, which aligns with St Nicholas Market entrance. Then there are various small streets that used to come off of Wine Street, like Adam and Eve Lane and Cheese Market. So we can create those sort of little small street sort of frontages and create a better frontage to the park. And then down to the south, Bridge Street, which obviously no longer exists, again, try to create a frontage onto the floating harbour there, which forms a good piece of public realm, and little routes up through, like Buttermarket Passage, which can go through to the site of St Mary Port itself.
Thank you, Keith. I'm now going to take you through how the site looks today. You'll all know it very well, I'm sure. This is an aerial view looking at Bristol, looking at Castle Park, and the red line is the development of our site, which is in line with the policy framework. You can see the existing buildings of Norwich Union Building and the Bank of England and the Lloyds Bank, with St Mary Laporte Church in the middle there. We've got the wide streets of High Street and Wine Street, and the existing trees that then merge into the park. These are some photos, current site photos that were taken this year. We're looking at opportunities to reconnect and reinstate some of the old historic connections, as Keith mentioned, but also to improve frontages along the site, especially High Street and Wine Street, working with the existing trees, and to improve and enhance the connection with and the relationship with Castle Park, and then looking at the ancient monuments and how we can restore these. These are the ancient monuments that exist on site. We've got the ruins on the top, St Mary Laporte Tower, on the top row, with the ruins at kind of low, high walls currently. And then in the bottom row, we've got the access into the vaults that some of you may not realise exist under High Street. And you see the photographs of the conditions that it's in currently. It used to be a wine bar of one of the pubs that used to exist on High Street before the war. We've also done some archaeology on site already. You might have noticed some people digging. The MEPC have decided to do early evaluations in order to understand what's under the ground, to inform the proposals better. Not much has been found. We've found some fragments of old pottery, but there'll be further evaluation being done during construction phase. There's also a process and an agreement of the strategy with Bristol City Council archaeologist. This is a plan view of the existing buildings and how they sit currently with the ancient monuments. So you see the ruins of St Mary Laporte Church with Norwich Union just jutting in there. And then the hatched area on High Street, that's where the vaults sit, and the little white box is the entrance that you currently see on the streetscape. And everything within our red line, the trees and the park. This is the development parameters that we're working with. It's the city centre framework plan showing that this site is allocated for development. They're showing 4 blocks, and one thing that MEPC have chosen to do is to actually only build 3 blocks, and giving the 4th back to the park. And Keith will come on and talk about that within the proposals. Over to you, Keith.
Thank you, Alice. So Alice has just described that we've got 3 lots that we're developing here out of the 4 that were allocated in the city centre framework. And so you can just see the outlines of 3 buildings, A, B and C here, with Vine Street to the top, High Street to the left, and in the middle of the picture, the ruins of St Mary le Port Church. And so on that 4th undeveloped quarter, that's got some of the most significant trees on it, and also some interesting level changes. And so the idea is to make a new sort of tiered terrace garden, retaining all those trees, but enhancing the landscape and extending the park into the site further. I'm just going to then take you, show you first of all the sort of uses of the within the building, and then I'll take you on a little tour around each of the street frontages. So this is the ground floor footprint, and in the sort of salmon colour, these are the independent shops, cafes and restaurants that Ros was mentioning. So that fine grain at street level with their shop fronts and canopies, and all of these buildings have active frontages all the way around with those activities. The blue are the entrances into the offices, which will be active working lobbies as well. So no dead frontages on these buildings at all. And if I go to the next plan here, this is the upper levels, which are the flexible and environmentally friendly offices that Chris was describing earlier. And here you'll see that many of the office levels open out onto generous roof gardens and terraces, not only for amenity for the office workers, but also to increase biodiversity and the ecology of the site vertically up onto the buildings. And we'll say a little bit more about that later. And then right on the top of the building, we're devoting the roof space for renewable energy with lots of photovoltaic cells to generate electricity, and also more biodiverse roofs and non-accessible roofs to create again part of the ecological story.
So this diagram illustrates the pedestrian movement around and through the site in relation to Castle Park and the historic city. And you can see that the proposed new streets of Mary le Port and Adam and Eve Lane, which are both car-free and pedestrian-friendly, will open up the site and make it more porous and help reconnect the city with the park. Development also allows for the proposed cycle routes, which have been identified in the city centre framework plan, which includes a cycle route along the western edge of High Street and diagonally across the park from the waterfront up to Union Street. And as Keith mentioned, creating a positive relationship between the development and Castle Park is a key objective. And from this plan, you can see that by not building on that 4th quarter, it has been opened up and the existing trees are retained in that area and created an improved transition between the park and the proposed development. And you can also see the proposed terraces there that Keith just mentioned, created for outdoor seating, which step down from the church ruins towards the waterfront and bring it in that sense of park and urban greening right into the heart of the space around the former church ruins. In order to compensate for the loss of the existing trees, we've explored opportunities for extensive new planting beyond the red line boundary within Castle Park, as shown here. This is an ongoing exercise with Bristol Tree Forum, Bristol City Council and the Friends of Castle Park. And there's an opportunity here to really reinforce the species diversity through new tree planting and to sort of continue that legacy of tree planting for the city. So the majority of existing trees will be retained, and these diagrams identify the trees that will be removed and also the new tree planting. So 3 trees need to be removed due to their impact on the existing historic assets around the former church ruin and the medieval vaults. and additional trees will also need to be removed along part of the Wine Street, highlighted in red there, and a tree to allow for the Mary Laporte Street to connect with the park, also highlighted in red. So these diagrams show you the range of proposals to enhance the biodiversity of the site. Firstly, there is a significant reduction in the area of hard space across the site. And other enhancement measures include new planting, rain gardens, bird and bat boxes, and other high vernacular, meadow areas, as well as the rooftop greening that Keith just spoke about.
Restoring the heritage assets allows us to potentially link into the heritage trail that exists within the historic city already, bringing in points of interest such as the High Street vaults or the ruins that sit in the heart of the site, or indeed the Saxon wall that sits under Bridge Street. This then allows it to extend further into the park to St. Peter's Church and to the castle walls. This can be displayed as interpretations within the landscape. This is a view looking from St. Nick's Market on Mary Laporte Street, looking towards St. Peter's Church. We've got St. Mary Laporte spire in the centre of the development, becomes the heart of the site, and we're opening up the church access in the tower so that everybody can access from all directions on the site. This is an aerial view of the ruins. We're thinking that majority of the time it will become a garden space, a quiet space within the city, allowing for microclimates for insects, but also for workers, locals, visitors to come and sit at lunchtime and eat their lunch. It can also, allowing it to be flexible by levelling out all the levels, it allows it to be used for lots of different events, community events such as yoga classes or live music or weddings, or indeed larger events that extend into the park, such as the one that Ros was talking about with the youth organisation. With that comes the security, making sure this is really a safe space and looking at the way we can light, either by lighting the tower itself, by lighting off the new buildings, or indeed the streetscapes, or in some cases for an event such as a Christmas market, it could have a temporary structure to really highlight the space. Over to you, Keith.
Yes, so this is where we're going to start a little sort of walk around. So hopefully you're familiar with the sort of site layout now, and in the centre of the picture again is the ruins of the St. Mary Laporte that Alice was just describing, and the reinstated Mary Laporte Street. And this is a view from just stepping outside Nick's Market on High Street, looking along that reopened Mary Laporte Street. And you can just see in the distance there that frames up a vista, a new vista of St. Peter's in the park there. And then in the foreground, you can see the active street frontages of these independent shops and cafes, with their in multiple sort of signage and canopies and just a whole life of those frontages to create that vibrancy and interest and vibe that Ros was referring to earlier. And then that comes about by trying to reference that back, as I was saying earlier, to the sort of the historic environment that used to exist there, which used to have that sort of finer grain of sort of shops and activities. And you can just see a little snippet of a corner of our High Street and Wine Street proposals there, how that's interpreted. And then just a couple of really important details. We've actually been working not only from the sort of macro level of looking at the placemaking, the public realm, but also actually at the detailed bases of the buildings, with these multiple shop fronts, these independent small shop fronts, which will be really crafted into the elevation and have interest with bays and recesses. And then, so you get a really interesting ground floor. And then up at the skyline, you also have, we've intensified the design there to create interest and a skyline to each of the buildings, with the profiles of the roofs, with the terraces of landscapes that I was describing earlier on each of the buildings. So ground and sky are well articulated with the architecture. This is a view from the other end of that Mary Laporte Street opened up. So you're looking now, and the vista is towards St Nick's Market there on High Street. You can just see to the right of St Mary Laporte Tower. And then on the left, you can see the cascading gardens and the retained trees down to the waterfront that Keith was describing earlier. And then the first of the buildings on the left is Building B, which steps down to the waterfront and creates an entrance to the park. And on the right-hand side, a new frontage created by Building A in the background and Building C in the foreground, creating this lively, active, south-facing frontage onto the park. And if we then come down to the waterfront, to Bridge Street and the floating harbour frontage with that Building B and that terrace landscape space, you can just see the detail that we're actually getting into the public realm there. And this is a view up from the floating harbour side, from in effect the extension of Bridge Street into the park, looking up that terrace landscaping towards St Mary Laporte, which is sort of grouped around with the buildings, so that St Mary Laporte becomes the absolute focus of the development. And then if we come round to the park entrance from Bridge Street, so we're onto High Street now, just stepping across Bristol Bridge. You can look up High Street and see Christchurch Tower in the background there. And the idea of really creating also a lot of design intensity around corners and the frontages there of these shops and cafes and restaurants. And this would be a great sort of location to hang out with cafes and restaurants as it faces south over the waterfront with great views along the floating harbour.
So the intention is to introduce new planting and rain gardens along High Street to reduce the area of existing hard space there, and to create a series of sort of planted terraces up the street. So these planted spaces will also provide resting and seating spaces for people with disabilities, and similar to the illustration in the bottom left of this slide. So this is a view standing on the corner of Broad Street and Wine Street, looking down High Street towards Bristol Bridge, where you can see the existing plane trees have been retained, underplanting and the greening of the street that I just mentioned, and also the sort of active new street frontage that Keith has talked through in some detail.
This junction here is such a significant part of Bristol, and some people say it's where Bristol began. We're calling it for now High Cross Corner, but we think it's a real opportunity to highlight this as a special spot by either reinstating a modern interpretation of the Bristol High Cross. The old one is too fragile to move, unfortunately. But then maybe it could be something for the future, something highlighting climate change, for example. This will be part of the wider public art strategy, and we'd love to hear your ideas. This is the view from Corn Street to that corner where the interpretation will sit. Keith, over to you.
Yeah, and this corner, so we're looking from Corn Street here with Broad Street on the left, and looking down along Wine Street, and then High Street going off to the right-hand side. So this Building A forms that corner, and sort of adopts its cap a little bit to the old Dutch house, which used to sit here with its jettying floors and detailed language of the facades. And you can also just see here how not only do the facades step out and with that sort of jettying language, but they also step back at the top to create these generous roof gardens and the skyline detail that I was mentioning earlier. If we go along to a sort of detailed plan now along Wine Street, you can just see a Building C there on the right-hand side, We've stepped that back from the frontage of Wine Street to retain the trees along there, and also to create an interesting alignment for St Mary Le Port Street to the south. This is a view along Wine Street of that building, with the retained plane trees, creating a new frontage to the park to the east, and to Wine Street. And this building terraces up with a series of landscape spaces up to the rooftops, and you can just see the Christ Church in the background there. Closer in view of that frontage, with again these active shops and cafes, restaurants, and a really high quality public realm with landscape. And further along Wine Street, we've opened up this old street, Adam and Eve Lane, little sort of passageway street, which is framed between Building A on the right hand side and C on the left, and creates a view down to the ruins of St Mary Le Port and through into the park and down to the harbour side. And just in summary, I just wanted to just talk about the characters of those three sort of buildings briefly. You'll have seen some images at street level of them. Each one varies in height from 4 stories to 9 stories, responding to its different conditions. And for example, Building A there takes reference from the Dutch house with that sort of jettying language. Building B in the middle there is out on the harbour frontage, so that makes reference to the Bristol Byzantine sort of quayside warehouses and merchant buildings that exist along the whole of the floating harbour. And then on the right-hand side, Building C, which sits on Wine Street and the park frontage, makes reference to Corn Street and Broad Street, creating more sort of civic and formal classical building on that corner to front the park. And just a few more images of those. So this is looking from Broad Street to that high cross corner that Alice was talking about, of that jettying building, Dutch house building. This is a view from across the other side of Bristol Bridge, looking up High Street with Christ Church in the background there and St Nicholas's Church on the left. And this Building B, as I say, makes reference to those sort of those warehouses in terms of its sort of language, rather ornate language, but also actually creates a series of stepped terraces back on its top to create an interesting top and also to open up views at high level. This is the building, Building C, the more formal building that sits on the frontage of the park and a corner of Wine Street, and looks back towards St Mary Le Port. And finally, this is a sort of a view further back along from within Castle Park along the harbour frontage, looking at the sort of cluster of buildings. And you can see in the centre there St Mary Le Port Tower and the opened up edge to the park, and the 3 buildings that actually have their own independent characters with their terraced landscape roofs and intricate skylines. So that's a brief description of walking around the site. So hopefully that was helpful.
Thanks, Keith. As I said at the start, I promised to come back in and just remind people how you can get involved. The first thing to do is to register on our website. If you haven't done so already, please visit our website, stmaryleport.co.uk. You can also provide your feedback to us through various different channels. You can write to us using a free post address, no need for a stamp. You can email us at info@stmaryleport.co.uk. You can also telephone us as well using a free phone number. All that we ask of you is that you please submit your comments before the 26th of April. That's just to give us enough time to review all your comments and look how we can positively respond to those through our application. Ros, I'll just hand over to you to talk a little bit about next steps, and then we'll move on to questions.
Sure, thanks, Nick. So in terms of next steps then, obviously we want to hear from as many people as possible through this process and think hard about the feedback that we get and how that relates to our final planning submission. Then we will work up that final planning application and submit that hopefully next month. what we're hoping is that if we can get our planning consent this year, then the demolition will be in 2022, and then the development itself will be in 23 and 24.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ros. Okay, thank you to all of our guest speakers. We're now going to move on to questions and answers. As I said at the start, I'm going to try and put these to the team in different themes. One of the first themes that started to emerge was a bit more detail around the mix of uses. There's been a few questions here, Ros, that I'll put to you, particularly around whether there'll be any residential. So we've had questions here from Christopher and Catherine in relation to this. Can you just confirm, will there be any residential? If there is any residential, will any of that be affordable?
Sure, yeah. So in terms of the mix of uses that we're proposing, that's a policy compliant mix. At the moment, and our intention, based on all of the discussions and the evidence and the research, is that it should be ground floor, retail, food and beverage. Independent shops seems to be the thing that will work best for Bristol in this location and add value. And then all the floors above will be employment use, so office use. And you know, it's our view that that is what's required in this part of Bristol. We're very conscious of all the residential that already is in the centre of Bristol, and of course the new development at the other end of the park. And what we want to do is add something here and play our part in creating a robust sort of mixed use heart of Bristol city centre.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ros. And Toby, I hope that also answers your question. There will be no student accommodation as part of the proposals. Ros, staying with you, can you just explain, again for Toby, how do you know that any of the retail units can be let, given that the shops in Bristol are closing, not opening?
Yeah, I think, well, so it's a few things really. One is I would say that Bristol remains one of the fastest growing cities in the UK, despite things like the pandemic. There obviously is a longer term effect of more shopping online and deliveries, and the sort of demise of retail in the country as a result of that, and the high street. But what we've learned and observed and have seen happening, and from the feedback in other parts of the country as well, is that people still want to have a shopping experience. Although they're going to buy things online more, people still want to come in to a city centre and have a day, you know, with the family or friends or on their own, Christmas shopping or what have you. And they will come into locations that are easily accessible and where there's a full range of shops available. So that's why we're proposing the independent shops at St Mary Le Port, so that you have the market offer, the independent shop offer, and then the large sort of floor plate multiples. So we're confident that we're doing something that is about supporting a trend, and where the shopping experience in large city centres, successful city centres, is going. And I also think that by improving the relationship of that site with the rest of the city centre and opening it up and making it attractive and inviting, that and adding in these new independent shops, that will bring more people in actually, and it will support the surrounding retail that's already there, which we're very keen to talk with and complement.
Excellent, thank you, Ros. And Keith, Bradley and Alice, I might need to bring you in here to support Ros on this. We had a couple of questions from Philippa, specifically around how much office floor space is proposed and how much retail is proposed.
Yes, so we've got about 29,000 metres squared across all 3 blocks for office space, and then about 2,200 metres squares in retail and F&B across all 3 blocks on the ground floor.
Fantastic, thank you, Alice. Sticking with the theme of retail, Ros again, if I may. Question here from Catherine. High street retail is changing and a lot of mixed use in the area stays empty. Are there any plans to enable ground floor creative use at subsidised rents to keep the development vital and used?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, getting feedback, and if you want to contact me if you've got some ideas separately, then that would be great. But we would like to make it somewhere really interesting, and that means it needs to change over time and have lots of different things going on. So I'd like there to be some shops that people can just hire for a short period to do something. I would like there to be community uses, and for it, what's going on in the shops to relate to the activity in the centre and surrounding the buildings in terms of the public art and the sort of creative activity. And then directly answering your question, we will have a certain percentage of the units at a discount to market rent for local companies. So I think the key thing is that we are long-term investors, and that means that we're going to stay and manage the buildings and look after it long-term. And we know that it will take time to get that right mix, to pick the right companies. And the phrase that's used is like, we're going to curate the space. So that will take some patience and really looking for a good mix and be supportive of local business and have some discount to market rent in there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ros. We'll just take two more on the uses. A question here from James. I know this has come up during our stakeholder engagement and it's been very popular today. Will there be any public toilets included in the plans?
Yes, I'd like there to be public toilets. I've talked about that from day one. And I think that it'll probably be part of our Section 106 obligations, and that's something we're yet to talk about in detail with Bristol City Council. But we have mentioned the sorts of things that we think would be useful in the area that people might want, and that's come from the stakeholder discussion. So public toilets has been one thing that's needed for the park, and also maybe a children's play area. And some of this may well be things that happen outside the red line of the site, but in conjunction with talking to the council, working in partnership with them. The local councillors, the ones that we've worked with, in the last year, have been fantastic at, thinking through what's needed for Castle Park, and of course, friends of Castle Park, Russ and Fraser and others. So we just really want to get to that next stage, really, of discussing that in detail, and I think we do need to put public toilets in that area. Yes.
Thank you, Ros. One last question, Alice. I think I'll bring you in here. A question from Linda. What provision will there be for delivery and service vehicle access to the shops and offices?
Yes, so our main access route is down Adam and Eve Lane, which is accessed off Wine Street. There'll be retracting bollards, which are managed by the management company on behalf of MEPC at specific times of the day. But all the rest of the public realm will be pedestrian only, except for fire engines in case of emergency.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alice. Okay, I'm going to move away from mix of uses. I'm going to go towards more design themed questions. We've had a couple of 4 questions come in here, 3 of those relating to height. Can we first of all take the question from Thomas, and Keith and Alice, I'll bring you in here. How high will the new buildings be in relation to the present buildings?
Keith,
thank you, Thomas. Well, I described the range of heights of the new buildings from 4 stories to 9 stories, responding to their, say, different conditions on the site. The current buildings, and Alice will correct me if I'm wrong here, range from, I think, 3 stories to 5 stories.
Yeah.
Currently on the site. Alice, is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Alice. Yes, we can.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move further into this theme. I've had a question here, another question from Thomas, who lives opposite the Norwich Union building, and also from Linda. They both make the same point. Thomas, I'll take yours. As someone living directly opposite the old Norwich Union building, I'm concerned about the significant increase in height of the replacement building. Is it possible to reduce the height? Rob, perhaps I bring you in on the first instance.
Sorry, bring me in on it, did you say?
Yes, probably yourself and Keith, I think, will be best placed.
Sure. So what we're trying to do is design a scheme that's going to relate to the kind of city centre location and the width of the streets. And really, we've asked Fielding Clare Bradley Studios to look really in detail at the heights of the buildings and how that relates to the urban setting. Keith, do you want to elaborate?
Sure. So in relation to the building that's on the corner of Bridge Street and High Street, which I think Thomas is referring to, you would have seen from the pictures that it varies in height, and we terrace the buildings back at upper level to soften the skyline, to create these terrace gardens, and to relate strongly to the landscape context of the park. We think it's right to have a frontage onto High Street. At the moment, the Norwich Union building creates a rather alien sort of space. Okay, it creates almost a sort of nondescript space that doesn't really do anything there. And so we think it'd be much better to front the High Street as it did historically, and also Bridge Street, which again also historically had buildings on that corner, and to create the activity that you would expect on the corner there at ground level, and forming also an entrance, a marker as an entrance into the park. It creates a much more sort of formal entrance into the park on that corner than it does at the moment. And also Bristol Bridge is a sort of key gateway into the centre of Bristol. Again, to have a building that actually is built on the corner rather than set back from the corner, in urban design terms and townscape terms, we think is much more appropriate than the current sort of setback Norwich Union building.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you very much. One more question in relation to design of the buildings from Russ. And Keith French, I might bring you in here. The existing St Mary Le Port ruins are supported to the south and east by heavy brick buttressed walls. Will this change during development? What treatment will it get? And are there any images which show post-development changes, or can they be described?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Russ. You're right. I mean, there was a significant level change there in terms of from the former ruins of the church down towards the waterfront. And because we're not building on that fourth quarter, we're able to sort of create these series of landscape or garden terraces, as we're calling them, that step up from the waterfront to the former church ruins. So actually creating a south-facing series of spaces that people can sit and socialize on. So it will be transformed very positively, I think, and form a very great, very positive relationship with the park and the waterfront. I think we did have an image in the presentation because there are two existing plane trees that sit at the base of these terraces. And I think Keith Bradley spoke about that area looking back towards the tower of St Mary Le Port.
Fantastic. Thank you, Keith. We'll move on now, and sticking to sort of the emerging theme here of heritage in St Mary Le Port Tower and ruins, and also the vaults. We've had a question from James. You mentioned the underground vaults earlier. Do you have any plans for them, or will you leave them be? Ros, this probably comes to you, but also possibly to Alice as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. So we will need to do something with the vaults. We need to work with Historic England to look at what is the best approach and agree that with them to look after them and preserve them for the future. And we're looking at access to them as well as part of that discussion. We haven't completed that discussion yet, but it's absolutely one of the things that we need to work on and look at whether they can be opened up and used, and how best to look after them and preserve them for the future.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ros, very much. We've also got a question here again from James, and I feel we've probably covered this subsequently in the presentation. Will the Bristol High Cross be replaced either as a replica or some sort of artistic nod to it in place of the original?
Yeah, that's right. We did. Alice covered that, didn't she? And yeah, we're just picked up with all the walks around site and the discussions with local community representatives that they're really conscious that there was something there once that was special, and there's an opportunity now to reinstate that. And we just want to think about what that ought to be. And I really like the way that Alice and the Field and Clay Bradley Studios team have looked at that with grants to say, well, if we can't bring the original back, what would a modern interpretation be? And whilst we need to be mindful of the past and think about the activity and how we want to, as Keith said, doff our cap to those things, we also want to think about the future of this great city and how something in the place there could speak about the future and be a modern interpretation, as Alice put it.
Thanks, Ros. And David Bruce, I hope that also answers your question. Where I believe you were typing, where is the reference to the High Cross corner? So hopefully that answers your question also. We'll move away from that theme and we'll just move over to trees. We've had a question here from Thomas again. Specifically, will the plane trees facing onto the harbour by Bristol Bridge be kept? Keith French, could I bring you in on that one?
Yes, thanks, Thomas. Yes, I mean the short answer is yes. Those trees will be retained. That those existing trees will be retained. And I think just to add that, in terms of the building footprints and their sort of three-dimensional form, have been arranged to retain those trees. So I think both Alice and Keith have worked very hard to work with those constraints and to retain those trees. And parallel to that, we've taken consultation and good advice from Bristol Tree Forum, Friends of Castle Park, and Bristol City Council Arborist in terms of retaining those trees as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Keith. We'll move over, I think, now to Castle Park, and we've got some more, I guess, sort of miscellaneous questions I found hard to put in a certain theme. One of those here, and I think Ros, it will come to you, is from Natalie. Will this transform the site into more privately owned public space for central Bristol?
Well, the site itself will be opened up and open to the public. And that means that the new terrace that we're putting into the park, the entrance on Bridge Street, the new historic street patterns that we're putting in, the ruins and the spire, all of that will be accessible 24/7. And it will be managed by us. We'll have a management company that basically looks after cleaning, litter, landscaping, security, and those sorts of things. So it should hopefully feel like a really nice place that's well looked after, but is fully accessible night and day.
Thank you, Ros. Staying in sort of Castle Park and the development site, we've had a question here from Ted that's come in during the Q&A. Are you considering adult gym provision? Very popular in Spain, I noticed. Good for active older people and passive office workers as well. And he says, by which I mean free to use kit in the park.
Yeah, we could do. It's not a bad idea. I've seen some really good kit of that kind, and I've seen some bad stuff as well that's really too heavy to lift, or maybe that's just me. But the only trick I would say is that if we put it in, you get fit by using it. So that's the only issue. People would have to use it to get fit, but I joke. But yeah, let's have a look at that and see whether there'd be space for it. And certainly we'd want to consult with Friends of Castle Park and the local councillors over whether that's appropriate. And the other thing to sort of bear in mind, you see, is Castle Park isn't just a little bit next to us, is it? It extends beyond St Peter's going east, and we're concerned to make sure that what we put in our part and next to us is appropriate and works with what's already going on, or the ambitions that Friends of Castle Park have got for the rest of the park, really. So we'll be led by by the local community representatives to a greater extent.
Thanks, Ros. Moving on to a new theme here around transport and changes to transport in the local area. We've had a question from Fraser. What changes to the surrounding transport system, roads, cycles, pedestrians, will take place? What will it look like? Ros, I'm going to put you on the spot in the first instance of that one, but feel free to bring anyone else in.
Yeah, I mean, I can confirm that we're a car-free scheme, so access, there will be some spaces for people with disabilities, car parking spaces, but apart from that, we're expecting people to cycle and walk and come on public transport to the site. And I've been talking to people like the Number 7 Ferry Company, because I'd be really excited to get that supported and think about the new entrance to Bristol Temple Mead being used and people using the ferry to come down at the floating harbour to St Mary Le Port site, you know, commuting as an office worker or at the weekend. So we're sort of fully understanding and cognizant of all of the local transport options. And then what we've done is we've worked in detail with Bristol City Council to look at that highway, and they have a number of scenarios that they're running at the moment around, you know, what will High Street and Wine Street look like? What are the options? So we've made sure that whatever we propose and get planning consent for will give them ultimate flexibility, give the council ultimate flexibility to change or stick with, or, you know, do new things with the roads that surround the site.
Excellent. Thanks, Ros. Going back to Castle Park, question here from Fraser again, and Ros, probably over to you again. How do we ensure that the development is carried out in tandem with Bristol City Council's improvement plans for Castle Park and the development at the galleries? Well, good communication is a good start, and that's already underway. Very conscious, talking with you, Fraser, if it's the same Fraser, and Russ and councillors, of your ambitions for Castle Park and the need to, you know, review all activity and amenity and layout and set out, and we have already fed in thoughts and ideas to that process that's only just started really in looking at strategically at Castle Park. And we have talked to the developers of the gallery site, and we've got another conversation booked in. So yeah, I think, you know, it's key to our success will be thinking about how we relate to the surrounding area and the surrounding developments, and gathering as much information and having those conversations. Fantastic, thanks, Ros. And again, staying with Castle Park and our buildings, question here from Russ. Will it be possible to incorporate more living walls / ledges on the park side of the buildings to soften the look and help them belong to the park? Possibly one to bring in our two Keiths, and Ros, you may want to also come in as well. Perhaps Keith French, yeah.
If I start, Keith, and then maybe you chip in. Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think we've always been very conscious of that relationship and the opportunities there for biodiversity as well in terms of connections. So, you know, on the architecture, there is a series of sort of planted terraces or garden terraces that facilitate and allow for new planting, and particularly on the upper level, there's a sort of biodiverse roof, which will really improve the overall biodiversity net gain of the site itself. So they are there, and maybe they were not as pronounced as they could be, but they're an important part of the overall development. Keith.
Yeah, that building, as I said in the presentation, is deliberately terraced with some very generous planted landscape spaces which open off the office workspace. It varies in depth and interval as it goes around the building, but the most significant terraces are on the park side, or on the sort of the south-facing side to the piece of park we're opening up in that fourth quarter, and also the frontage that faces St Peter's that side. And I think we have 3 landscape levels up the building there, which are planted and will be designed to have planting on and will be managed so that the plants sort of survive. And as Keith said, we also then have the non-accessible planted roofs, which add another level of sort of biodiversity and ecology up there. Whether we have enhanced that further with wall planting or living walls and that sort of thing, and I mean Keith French at Grants and ourselves, we've done schemes with those in. They do have sort of varying success in terms of their sort of management and longevity, and we've tended to prefer to put plants sort of in there with their sort of root feet in the ground, as it were, or on terraces, rather than to stick them onto walls. I do think actually probably the plants will start to grow down the walls from the top rather than up from the ground below, because we do want to obviously have all the shops and restaurants and things like that at the ground level. We do have a lot of ground landscaping very close to those buildings as well. I mean, obviously there's the existing trees that are there, but also they've been enhanced by Keith with further sort of planting there. But certainly we can look at this a bit further in detail as we go through. So Fraser will have a think about that a bit further.
Excellent. Thanks to both of you, Keith. I'm going to take us back to the start of our presentation and just pick up on social impact. We've had a question here from Heather for you, Ros. Interested to hear more about the human welfare benefits on this site.
Okay, well, there's a number of those, and they come in from the environmental net gain initiative as well as the social impact. So when I look around the site a few times, I've noticed, that people that are our current residents are homeless, and there's some young people hanging about, and the local community reps have said to me it's not very nice times, and Russ has said before about the tagging and the graffiti and things like that. And I talked to local representatives, talked to St Mungo's, Bristol Drug Project, St Nicholas Church, and obviously friends of Castle Park and councillors, and said, what could we do to have a positive impact, like straight away? How can we help? And the Bid and St Mungo's and others said, well, if we could do up the site and make it active, that will help, because really you don't want people thinking that it's okay to sleep rough, because it will be traumatic for them. And St Mungo said, if anyone is sleeping rough, ring them and they will help those people in need. So that was the sort of, okay, well, we'll do that, but what do we do in the meantime? And that's where a few of the different people said, well, we're really concerned about young people getting work experience, meaningful work experience, not just, because careers, education and things isn't, a massive thing in schools at the moment, but also because of COVID and people being so restricted, and we're just worried about young people. So we want to do something that's going to have that lasting impact on individuals' lives, and that's why we're working with Creative Youth Network, who have youth workers who work with these people, and we'll work with LPW as well, the PRU, try and work with young people that are at the site at the moment, that come, there's about 30 of them, but also the LPW, and also try and bring young people in who maybe feel like they're stuck in their enclaves in their bit of Bristol, bring them into some neutral space at Castle Park to get to know each other and grow in confidence. So that's the social impact welfare benefit. But then what the environmental net gain strategy in the Environment Bill brings in is this whole concern that not only do we need to look after the environment for biodiversity support of the natural environment and wildlife, but also be very conscious of green space and wildlife as amenity for people. And so we're looking at what are we doing to bring in and introduce more planting, more soft landscaping, more pleasant spaces for people to relax at lunchtime or come in as a family and enjoy space. And the thing about park space is that it's very accessible for anybody with any budget, and that's why it's important to have the toilets and the playground there too, because you want people to feel that, you know, this bit of Bristol is for them, and that you don't have to have a load of money or work there to just go there and enjoy the green space and all of that welfare benefit.
Excellent, thank you, Ros. Jen, I hope that answers your question as well. Jen just asked, what about asking actual local young children and young people about what is needed?
Yes, that's part of what we'll be doing. Yeah, we've set up the group with the stakeholders. We've discussed how we're going to work together, and we will be consulting young people about our development and about what they want. And they will be running the programs. You know, that will be part of the work experience.
Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to a few more sort of miscellaneous questions. I've got a question here from Joseph. Ros, I'll keep you on if I may. What is the likelihood that the project will go ahead, as there has been many proposals for this site before, and what is the time frame for completion?
Okay, so yeah, we're confident that we've got a policy compliant application and that we've consulted widely, and this is part of it. So we'll see what people on the call today and tomorrow and the feedback during April, what that brings. We want to submit something that people say, yeah, we can see what they're doing there and that makes sense and that would be good to have. So we need to get consent first is my point, and that's where other schemes have not been successful. And we, you know, bought the buildings and the interests, and we're sorting out the land because we want to develop that site and bring that scheme forward, and then we will look after it and manage it long term. And the time it takes to do that, as I sort of said earlier, is the basic outline is get consent this year, do the demolition next year, and then it will take 18 months, 2 years to get the 3 buildings built. We'll build them all at the same time and enhance the public realm and do the whole thing. So the whole thing should be finished by the end of 2024, could be a bit earlier than that. Chris Kimber-Nicholson, did you want to say anything about the timing of the demolition and the development?
No, I think you outlined our thoughts as to where we are. None of that is set in stone, but we, you know, we do tend to progress these things. We've got a track record of delivering large city centre complex sites around the UK. So you know, we fully anticipate meeting or being close to the programme Ross has outlined.
Fantastic, thanks both. Ros, sticking with you again, a question here from Natalie. What spaces will be given over to advertisers and what plans are being made for things like digital billboards for advertising?
Well, in terms of the shop frontages, we're looking to make that as kind of diverse as possible. So we're hoping that each individual unit can have its own signage, and the colours and everything else and lighting will be individual, and we're looking to do that to create a vibe. In terms of sort of billboards and signage of that kind, I haven't myself looked at that. I don't know whether Keith or Alice, you have any views on precedents in Bristol, what's needed, or whether that's something we should be looking at in detail.
Bristol do have some of the digital billboards that display information on some of the streets. We could look at bringing one of those in if it's felt it's needed. But we have a lot of public realm, and you know, there's the public art strategy that comes into that as well. So I'm sure it's something that we could incorporate if we felt it was appropriate.
Need to get more views from local.
It's not something we do. We don't sell.
That's important, isn't it? And also the nighttime situation.
Yeah, we don't sell advertising space generally across our portfolio. But if it's an information type thing, then we could look at it. Historic England would no doubt have a view as well as to how they were placed near the heritage assets, which should make it unlikely for them to be able to be put many places.
I mean, as a follow-up, Natalie, if you want to send us some information about what you were thinking about, we'll have a look at it and we'll consult on that with Friends of Castle Park, councillors and the like.
Fantastic. You took the words out my mouth, Ros. Thank you. Don't worry. A question here from Christopher. Has the current situation with COVID changed the timescale for this development?
No, actually, I don't think it has. If anything, although we haven't got the control conditions to compare it with, right? So I don't know what it would have been like to meet people face to face, and I think it will be really great when we can all get together. I did have time. We did have time as a team to meet with individuals face to face a bit last year when we were allowed out. But most of the discussions and consultation and presentations have been done on Microsoft Teams and Zoom, and I think that's meant that we've been able to have many more conversations. I think people's kind of ability to meet with us has been opened up, and I feel like actually potentially it's benefited from the new ways that we're talking with each other. It certainly hasn't impeded us.
Fantastic, thank you. And Ros, probably another one for you, although I might bring in Chris as well. What is the forecasted price per square foot for the ground floor retail units to enable them to be affordable to independent retail?
Well, we're getting advice on that because we're not there yet. Where we've got to in terms of the thinking on the ground floor is obviously the patience to get the right mix, the thinking about what that right mix should be and affordable for customers. So, you know, a range of different retail offers for, you know, anyone in Bristol, families and the like. And then we've talked, some feedback was interesting that's come through, is that there's a number of places in Bristol where micro businesses are establishing in tap rooms and distilleries and at Wapping Wharf, and that those sorts of businesses would really welcome small units at somewhere like St Mary Le Port to grow their business. So it offers the next size up. So it's offering something to the market that isn't established already. And then in terms of the actual price per square foot, it will need to be a market rent and then discounted. And, you know, rents in 2024 probably be slightly different to what they are today. So it's possibly meaningless to say a physical figure per square foot. But if you were to look at what a market rent is for a retail unit in Bristol at the moment, that's our starting point, and then there'll be a discount which we're just discussing at the moment with the council for a certain percentage of those units. So I can't say a particular price per square foot because we're not there in terms of being in 2024, if you see what I mean. I don't know if Chris, if you want to add anything. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks both. We've had a question here from Heather in relation to construction. And Chris, perhaps you might be best placed for this one. Regarding the building, there will need to be a large amount of vehicles for delivery of building materials. How will that impact on the local streets?
Yes, well, that's a true question. That's a true statement. That's what happens in these situations is we have to submit and agree with the council a document called a construction traffic management plan, which details in quite a lot of detail the traffic movements that are anticipated, when they're allowed to happen, when they're not allowed to happen, what size they can be, how many there can be, and the routes that those vehicles can take. So that would be managed through that process of agreeing that framework with BCC, Bristol City Council. And it may well be that you know, it's usual practice for deliveries to be outside of normal business hours, if you like, so slightly earlier in the morning or slightly later in the evening. Obviously, there are residential areas around the site, so you know, it's a question of getting it timed when it's going to cause least disturbance and less aggravation on the roads. But that's how that process is managed. We have to agree with the council a plan for managing that.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. A question here, Ros. Interesting question, actually. What does MEPC stand for?
It stands for Metropolitan Estates Property Corporation, and the company was set up in 1948 by a guy called Claude Lee, who owned the land along the Metropolitan line. And he went on as a private company to build things like Centrepoint Tower and even hotels in Hawaii. But when it was listed in 1973, that's when it became known as MEPC rather than Metropolitan Estates Property Corporation.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. Okay, questions are sort of starting to dry up now, and I've noticed a few people have started to leave the session. We have another 10 minutes, so if anyone does have any further questions, please do type them into the chat box, and I will put those to the team. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes just to see if there's any more, and if not, we'll end the session. Okay, just to come in and I can deal with some of these questions. Ted, can we have a copy of the slides, please? This session's recorded, so what we'll be doing, Ted, is making that available on our website, and likewise tomorrow's session as well. So you can go back at any time, rewatch the session, have a look at the slideshow again, and listen to the explanations again. Natalie, where is the best place to email you re-advertising plans? If you could just email the project email address, info@stmarylaporte.co.uk. Catherine, thanks for your time today. Thank you, Catherine, for coming along. A question here. I know you will be exploring putting in toilets. Will they be open 24 hours? I live opposite the park, and there are always people peeing in the bushes opposite my flats.
Oh dear, poor you. Yes, I mean, I think we haven't decided on exactly how that would work, but I know that the sort of Superloo concept works really well, and that they are more hygienic and COVID safe. And you know, we'll have a management company that will keep an eye on that sort of thing. So we just need to work with Friends of Castle Park and the councillors really to look at, and you know, the council officers to look at what's appropriate there. But it'd be nice to stop people doing that, wouldn't it?
Brilliant. Thanks, Ros. That's fantastic. Okay. Comment here from Russ, which I'll read out, and a question actually. This is the best location for the tourist information shop. Will a discounted space be made for this purpose, and can it include a historic shop with artifacts?
We'll look at that, Russ. Yeah, we'll definitely look at that. I was thinking that too, that it'd be really great if it became a bit more of a tourist attraction. Obviously, it's been all closed up, and you know, once we open up that ruins and the spire, and we'll put some more information out about it as well, and obviously with St Peter's Church as well, there's quite a lot for people to come and look at to attract them in. So some signposting in a tourist information type setting is not a bad idea. Yeah, it's one of the things that's on my list.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ros. Okay, we'll just give it one more minute. See if there's any further questions, and if not, we'll end the session. Okay, most of the comments coming through now are just thanking everyone for their time. From us, thank you for attending. Thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
to our guest speakers for talking us through the proposals today. We are doing another session tomorrow at 6 o'clock, so please feel free to sign up and join that as well. It will be the same information, but please do come along. As I said during the presentation, the next step is to register if you haven't done so already. Please go to our website, stmarylaporte.co.uk. And thank you from me, thank you from the team, and we'll end the session now. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.